Hey everybody, it's Matt Nelson here with the Word on Fire Institute, and I'm here with Jared Zimmerer, the director of the Institute, and our newest fellow here at the Word on Fire Institute, Joe Zambon. He is a fellow of communities, by the way, and we're excited to have him. So, Joe, welcome to the studio.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
Have you here, man.
This is going to be a fun 40 minutes because we're going to get to know you a little bit. I know you well. You and I go back a ways. You're a fellow Canadian, but not only that, you're a former roommate of mine. And I was in your wedding party, you were in mine, and by God's providence, I don't know if people are going to believe this or not, but by God's providence, you and I both, for very different reasons, ended up in darn near the same suburb of Dallas-Fort Worth area. And I kind of backed off, and Jared knew who you were, and over the course of time, you became our newest fellow at the Word on Fire Institute. So it's pretty crazy that we're sitting here together as colleagues now, working with Bishop Barron and the Institute. And so, yeah, God is good. And so we'll probably get into a little bit more of that whole story as we talk here. But let's jump into just an icebreaker sort of question. Talk a little bit about where you grew up, a little bit about your upbringing. Were you raised in a Catholic family? Did you come to the church later in life? Just a bit of a snapshot of your past.
Great, yeah. So raised in a Catholic family just outside of Ottawa, Canada, on a farm. So I'm a farm boy at heart. And, I think faith in my parents' home, was something that was very deeply rooted. They were both missionaries themselves. They met in Ethiopia, and there's a whole other story there. But my parents, I think, really lived out a mission in the home, and they really instilled that in us. And so all of the three brothers were all still involved in the faith. And I think for myself, I would always say I never drifted far from the church my whole life. But I think my big question was always, does God really love me? And, and that was something to do with my own journey in life, with a little story too quickly, but my hands, my fingers were webbed together when I was younger, and I had surgery to separate them, but that was an identity thing I struggled with, like, does God really love me? And in time, in my later teens, I really felt God speak that to my heart. And that was just a huge, I would say, conversion moment for me. It wasn't like, I had to leave the church to find the Lord, but it was more like, do you really love me? And he spoke that to my heart. So that was kind of like then the journey for me into different things with mission as well, with different ministries I was involved with. But yeah, my family to this day, thankfully, we're all kind of journeying the faith together in our different stages of life. Mm-hmm. And it's great to even support each other too through the different seasons and even states of life as we all get older.
There's also an interesting story of, and maybe just kind of briefly touch on it, but how your parents met. I think that's just such a fascinating, because you're such a world, like all over the world guy. You just got connections on like every continent or something. So.
Yeah, and this is interesting too, because, me eventually moving down here to Dallas, Texas, my parents couldn't really get mad at me because they understood themselves, like, you know what, if you're open and you let the Lord kind of lead your life, he could take you really anywhere. And that's really the story of my own parents. My dad, he was a religious brother for many years with an Italian order. He's an Italian. And he got shipped to Ethiopia and Africa. And my mom, being a Canadian, after she had finished her college degree, wanted to do some mission work, got set up with this organization. And where did she go? She went to Ethiopia, met my dad in this mission, and my dad, it's another story too, but he had his own struggles with the order. And so he ended up getting a dispensation and leaving the order. And then in time, my parents got together. But it was interesting too, like what brought them together was this common mission. Yeah. They really got to know each other as brother and sister, but also, as missionaries together in this foreign land. And that's why I always say my parents then brought the mission to the home. And that never left. Most of my brothers too, we just kind of have this understanding of too, like it begins in the home and then it moves out. But, faith is really like best lived, behind those doors, and in the sense that that's where it really takes deep roots, and then from there that's what you have your action in the world, right?
Yeah.
So I've always been inspired by my parents, and encouraged by their faith, you know, a very simple faith, but also an evangelical faith.
That's awesome. So tell us a little bit about kind of where you went to school and some of the missions that you've been on prior to joining the Institute.
Yeah, I would. There's a few things I think that happened in high school that kind of set me on a course. In my last year of high school, I went on a mission trip to the Dominican Republic, and that really, again, seeing photos from my family and my parents' experience in Africa, you know, it had an impact on me, but it's different than when you're living with these people as well. Mm-hmm. And that started to open up my heart in a new way, because my parents too, they had an open door policy to travelers at our home. And so, you know, we'd have different people stop by, but we often would always invite the priest over. And if the priest ever had a visiting friend over, one of the first families they go to is like, oh, the Zambon home, because they're going to like show hospitality. And I remember one time we had an Indian priest at our house who had a missionary friend living there. And he pointed at me, you know, during dinner time. He's like, one day you might become a missionary. And at the time I was, you know, a young teenager. And I was like disgusted by the idea. I thought like, oh, this is like, who'd want to do that? That's like terrible. But it planted a seed, you know, and then later on in high school, I went on this mission trip and I was like, wow, like to live your life in a way that's not about you, you know? And later in that grade 12 year, I had a NET team. NET is National Evangelization Team. I had a NET team come and do a retreat for me. And get this is how funny life is. My small group leader was from Houston, Texas. Of all places, you know, never thinking of one day I'll ever live in Texas. But he was there, and, you know, I don't remember anything from that retreat, but I do remember how he treated each one of us and had a profound impact on me. And I was like, I want to be like this guy.
Wow.
So, you know, as most of my classmates were applying to colleges and getting on with their life, you know, moving here and there, I was like, I think I want to do NET. So I did 2 years on with NET Ministries, one in Canada, one in Ireland. And then after that, again, I never really knew. I was like, I don't have any desire to do anything else except learn the faith more. So I had a friend who was studying at a Dominican college in Ottawa. So I applied, got in, and there I found myself, you know, in first year theology class, like chipping away at it without really any direction. And from there, you know, other, you know, encounters with different people that eventually then got me into university pastoral ministry. So it was just amazing that, you know, the people I met along the way had such an impact on my life and then also on my formation, because I was like, I want to be like you. That took me on NET Ministries. Then it was somebody who had studied at Dominican College. I'm like, oh, I think that's like the next, I want to study the faith more. I want to be better at, you know, sharing that with other people. So one thing to another, you know. Well,
so before we hear more about what happened next, because you took a big role at a giant secular university in Toronto, which you held for 8 years. We're going to talk about that in a moment. Quickly, there's NET Ministries is in the United States as well, right?
Yeah.
So people will know what that is. Yeah, so that's a pretty like
the Americans will know.
Yeah, right. Yeah, well, you never know what the Americans do and don't know when we start talking Canadian. So, well, you've mentioned your brothers, so I want to just divert there for a second. I mean, clearly you all were affected by, you know, your missionary parents, but also the people that came through your home and the witnesses of other missionaries, whether it was NET coming through your hometown or whatever it may have been. You're all a very mission-hearted family. Talk a little bit now about your brothers and what they're up to.
Yeah, you know what? I have a lot of esteem and respect and love for my brothers, you know. And I really, firstly, will look to my older brother. He's 1 year older than me. And where I really saw him just trailblazing for us brothers was actually after elementary school into high school. Most of my classmates, a small, like, local school, most of them went to the local public high school. Except my brother went 50 minutes down the road to a Catholic high school. There he had to, like, start his whole friend circles again, you know, different city. And it was really tough on him. But the friendships he made there too were Christ-centered. And for me, when I stepped then into high school the next year, you know, he kind of welcomed me in. And I would say that my older brother was my best friend in high school. You know, we did everything together. We started a band in high school, and we would just often do so much together. And then my younger brother, you know, trickles along in, and he kind of follows on our coattails. But what was interesting then, you know, I go off, I do net. My older brother goes off and does heritage carpentry. You know, he's a bright, brilliant guy. And, you know, his teachers were like, why are you wasting?
What's heritage carpentry? I've never heard of this. This is some obscure ministry that
It's a Joseph ministry. No, it's just a specific, like, how you rebuild homes, but also it's like more like heritage styled homes. There's different techniques than.
So he's getting his hands in the trades is what he was doing.
Yeah,
Okay,
for
gotcha.
sure. And you know, so he starts going to college for that. But he has this this thing in his heart that I might be called to the priesthood. But he's kind of like, probably not. So, you know, I'm off doing that. He's doing this like 2-year college degree. And when I enter then my first year of theology, he actually then enters the seminary. So it's kind of neat because we then had these like parallel, like I'm studying just as a layman, but he's studying to maybe become a priest. And his whole thing was like, I'm just, you know, going to go into the seminary to get rid of this kind of like Jesus thing. And, you know, I'm sure he means something else, and I'm just going to kind of get rid of it.
Give it a shot,
yeah. But anyways, he went down the road to that and is now ordained a priest, a diocesan priest. And my younger brother too, we shared, with my older brother too, a love for music, but especially my younger brother. And, you know, as I got more into songwriting, you know, my brother too, he went into sound engineering. So then we would record albums together, and then we get on the road together. Me and him have spent probably more time together than me and my wife. Sometimes I think about it. The close quarters we've been on the road, like months straight, driving in a car, setting up equipment, playing a show.
That'll change someday because you've only been married for what?
That's right.
2 years.
2 years.
Yeah.
But even then, to you know, to share a love for the arts, you know, with a younger brother too, and to really challenge each other to make really good art. You know, he's always been someone's like, you can do better than that. And like, I know you're comfortable with this level of production, but let's take it to the next level of production. So he's always been someone too that has challenged me in the arts to make the best art you can make. So yeah, my brothers, you know, just you know, my younger brother now, he's a CCO, Catholic Christian Outreach missionary.
It's like the Canadian version of Focus in a way. I don't know if they'll be okay with me saying that. I think they will because they have a great relationship with Curtis Martin and the Focus people, but thriving campus ministry in Canada.
Yeah. And so it's great now, you know, as we are all involved in our different ministries, when we do connect, it's just, you know, it's catching up on, hey, how's life? How's your heart? But also, how's the mission going? Like, what's
That's awesome.
Where are you kind of pouring into right now? What are you learning, and what are you challenged in?
Well, you've mentioned now your past and present, I suppose, as a songwriter and a musician, and that's actually been a huge part of how you've ministered to others, and you're humble to the extreme where it's rare that you'll bring it up unless someone asks you. So I'm asking you right now to talk about your career, I guess you could say, or calling as a musician. In Canada, just about every Catholic under the age of 40 knows who Joe Zambon is. But and you've toured in the United States, and there's you know, many people in this country that know who you are, and Australia, India, other parts of the world. But tell us a little bit about your ministry as a musician and how, and I guess like connect that now to your role with the Word on Fire Institute as a communities fellow. What has that experience as a musician and a songwriter given you that will bolster your abilities to reach people now here?
Great, yeah. There's so much there, you know. The journey of music has really been tied in, I think, a lot with like the journey of my own identity. Just like I shared a little bit of the story of my hands, music I mean, I play with my hands, you know, and I was so embarrassed for so many years to play in front of people because I would be afraid that they would see my hands. And that was a journey in of itself that I, you know, as the Lord kind of showed, like, no, I love you as you are. Mm-hmm. And as that really like began to sink in deep, I looked at my hands and like, this is beautiful. And it was that intimacy with the Lord. I felt that I had, like, you know, my hands are scarred, his hands are scarred, that I really felt like I am like so close to him with that. And that's what then encouraged me actually to go out. And most of my music at the beginning, you know, I wasn't really doing it for other people, to be honest. Like, I was just trying to process my own life, like, what is going on in my heart? What am I wrestling with? And I would often say, you know, these songs are from the broken for the broken. Mm-hmm. I've had some people say, like, I don't really connect with your music because it's kind of dark. Okay, that's fine. It's not, you know, necessary for everyone. But for me, this was like the journey of like asking a why, and the Lord in time sharing a little bit into my own heart, into who he is. And what was interesting was then, as I started sharing the music, like, it was resonating with other people. You know, people would send me, once I got like a website up, you know, even on Facebook, people would send me messages of like, hey, your music has really helped me forgive my father. Hey, your music has really helped me on my journey with faith. And, you know, it's given me a lot of peace in life and with so much anxiety and depression in my life. And there was even too, like, when I was on net, I remember there was a woman who came up to me after Mass. I was leading worship at Mass. And she's like, she looked at me kind of like weird, like, you know, where someone like locks in on your face. Mm-hmm. And she's like, you have an anointed voice. Mm. And at the time, I didn't even know what that word meant, anointed. I thought she was probably weird. And so I politely thanked her and then just got away from her as quickly as I could. But that word was like, what does that word mean? You know, like when someone has an anointing, like, and so in time, like, I really started to see this music as a ministry. It wasn't just like, hey, like, I'm a musician who plays and let's write a rock album. But it's like, it's a ministry, and specifically I saw it as a ministry of healing. Mm-hmm. Like, I've been healed, and the Lord continues to heal me in so many ways. I think I'm totally fine. Like, for my hands example, like, it's in layers of like, oh my gosh, like, I need more healing in this area. And over time, but as I receive that, I'm like, it's not for me to keep now. I have to give it away. So that's how, like, I guess, you know, I was even then encouraged to go out, to write, to continue to do it, to meet people, to listen to their stories, and then share it back. Mm-hmm. And, you know, I do see this as part of, you know, building community. It's like, we're all people on a journey. And you got things going in your life, I got things in my life. And part of the ministry that we do is a ministry of healing. It's a pastoral care. You know, we can think that, you know, Jesus is just about, I'm the truth and get over it and receive that. But sometimes he just meets them where they're at and does a healing. Mm-hmm. You know, he meets them on a very basic level because he actually looks at them and he listens to them and he knows them. Mm-hmm. So this is part of our communities. Like, our communities have to be a place where, you know, we're kind of a messy people, you know, and there's different parts to us that need to be addressed. And sometimes people need to step aside from maybe frontline ministry, like work, to work on themselves and to do stuff. But then also people need to be, like myself, I need to be challenged to go out. It's like, I know you're afraid that you're going to be rejected because of this part of you or something. But it's not about that in the end anyways, because you're so focused on yourself. So this is also too where a community challenges one another to say, like, no, we have to go out because the world needs this healing. The word needs this message.
I think also, I mean, you know, one of our principles is leading with beauty, right? For the Institute, and music provides sort of a method or a mode of being able to express our messiness, express our struggles of faith, but also express the truth of the faith. in a way that's pleasing to the ears, in a way that kind of reaches the soul, in a way that's not really combative. And if you can do that with a crowd, I mean, that's such a communal reality of being able to express those things. And so to me, it fits right in with what we're trying to encourage in the Institute, which is to help people understand their gifts and talents and bring them out to the world and lead with that beauty. And a large part of that is being able to express it in a way that the modern mentality can take it. So it's just such an interesting kind of background you've got to bring those gifts into this. And I'm sure as much as you've traveled, I didn't even know you went to India and all of that, but Australia and all over the place, you've probably met, thousands, if not tens of thousands of people, all with their own stories, yet there's still this kind of one avenue of leading with beauty and music, and it creates kind of a community around the message that you're providing.
You should also mention, because you talked about how you're a musician, use your hands. You haven't mentioned that your instrument of choice is a bongo. So
bango bongos,
in case
yes.
people are in case people are wondering. No, it's an acoustic guitar.
Yeah. Well, to your point, Jared, I think that music is so sneaky.
Yeah.
It's so sneaky because I remember too when I put up some of my first albums, and I'd have people I know like were atheist and like not church people, and they're like, "Dude, I love this song." I'm like, "It's like literally a Jesus song," like, and they're like, I would tell them that like, aren't you like turned off by this or anything? And I was constantly being reminded that people are drawn into that beauty, and then it's basically presented in a way where like I'm willing to listen to it now.
Yeah. Because
maybe the rough edges before, when it's just like a dry, crusty piece of bread, it's like the truth, it's hard to receive, but it's like you've dressed it up in a way, and it's not to take away from it, but it's actually like, wow, that's really drawn me in. Like now I'm actually hearing the lyrics for the first time.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, that's kind of interesting. And so I think the arts, but all these different ways that we have beautiful things, it does create a common language that can unify people that normally would not have anything to do with each other. It's kind of like you going to the rock concert, and the song comes on that everybody knows, and they got their arms around each other, they're singing together. As soon as the song's done, it's like arms go down. It's like, let's not talk about this anymore. But like it for that moment could draw people in, so as an evangelical tool, like we have to be aware of that, how we can present the faith, but using things that is already a language they speak. They speak the language of music. They speak the language of arts. So let's meet them there, and then from there, see where the conversation goes.
Yeah, and I want to get into your other work as a pastoral assistant, but also, in regard to leading with beauty, something that music provides. And I think you're touching on something that I would hope any of the artists that are listening, there's a way in which you can provide the truth of the gospel that's not moralizing, right? It's not and from Roger Scruton to Hegel, they would say that like moralizing actually destroys art. It needs to just be an expression of something that's within us, and something that is just something that doesn't knock people over the head. Rather, it's kind of a beautiful, transcendent moment that provides something to think about, right? So you're not moralizing, and that's why the atheists you're speaking of, it doesn't hurt their kind of like atheist mentality, because they're able to kind of just listen to the beauty of the moment and kind of just rest in that without feeling like they just got hit over the head with something, right?
Well, I'm also thinking of von Balthasar, who talks about the arresting quality of beauty, right? It stops them for a second, and it draws them in a subtle way that triggers them to consider and contemplate things that maybe they wouldn't have otherwise. And it puts them into a different place. And that's more important today than ever. We talk about this at Word on Fire all the time, the importance of leading with beauty as the arrowhead of evangelization, as Bishop Barron says. Beauty does that. In a busy time where we lack attention to the infinite degree, beauty is the one thing that can stop anybody in their tracks and make them take a step back and contemplate the important questions of life, And so, I think that your experience as an evangelist, especially through the mode of using the beautiful to communicate the gospel, I think that that's such a unique gift that you have. And on top of that gift, you just have the gifts that you were able to apply person to person in a, kind of a very standard and generic way, just looking a person in the eye and talking to them wherever they may be at this large university campus in Canada. So you were pastoral assistant for 8 years, and loads of experience there. So let's get you talking about that now. Over those 8 years, who were the type of people that you would meet in that position, and what were some of the strategies that you used to reach them and to present the gospel to them in a non-invasive but compelling way that got them to consider the truths of the faith and the possibility that it might be true?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Toronto is a very multicultural city, and York University specifically has a lot of international students. So I would say, the whole world really is represented at that university and in many ways in that city. And it's interesting because if we only let people, basically, if we waited for people to come to us, we would only probably have a certain group of people that we then encountered. But we were big on, let's go out. Let's go out into the hallways. Let's, say a prayer and then go out and then just meet people. And I think what we have to get away from is that we think we're always going to be met with hostility, and, people don't want to see your face and they just want to get you. There are those people, but the thing that I noticed time and time again was that there are seekers. There are those who are searching. And university campus, there's so many young people leave their home, and now they're like, okay, I'm going to try to find my way, And if we, the church, are not visible, not present, so that we can be found, there's a missed opportunity. And so we would, in a very, non-threatening kind of way, just make our presence known. One tactic we used was a popcorn machine. Fill it full of butter, and that smell goes across the whole campus. Really, we get in one of the busiest hallways, crank that thing up, and then it just brings people out. And you're meeting them on a very basic level, like I'm between classes, I'm hungry, forgot my lunch, bag of popcorn. This is non-threatening. And then it's interesting. Some people walk up, popcorn. They're just like thinking popcorn. They grab the popcorn, not knowing that they grabbed it from the Catholic chaplaincy. And then it's like, whoa, what's going to happen now? They kind of go into their own like storyline that you're now going to do this to me. You're now going to say this to me. But we're just invitational. And we're inviting them to another conversation maybe later on. Hey, can we get together with you later to maybe share more about what we do?
So you didn't have a baptismal font right next to the table, just
we
in
did
case?
Behind the table if there were any, but for most part, it's just you have to think long term, and so most times I think, we're trying to get that quick win with somebody and just say this prayer and then it's going to be okay. When sometimes it's we have to think long term game again too, because it's about knowing your audience. There's going to be the student that runs up and they're like, oh my gosh, I'm so glad I found the Catholic chaplaincy. I was involved in chaplaincy for my whole high school career, and now I just so glad. You're going to find those kids, but you're also going to find students that are skeptical, those that have been wounded, and so who's your audience? Is this a moment where you have to just be charitable and listen and kind of take it? Or maybe is this maybe are they looking for an answer, or are they just looking to vent? And you got to be able to start discerning that, because if you go in with just a one track evangelization tool, bop them over the head, it's not gonna work in those types of environments. And the way that I think you start to have more discernment is you have to be in those environments. So you have to go out, you have to start meeting people, you have to be comfortable with different types of people, because you're going to have people that are going to try to change your mind on things. And it's okay to listen. it's okay to not always win an argument. Sometimes it's like, I'm really going after the long-term game here. So it means maybe just saying, hey, that was really interesting what you said. I'd love to talk more about that with you. Well, now you've opened the door to a further conversation. And they know that you're open to even hearing them. Well, that already disarms them. So it's interesting in the university, especially, a very secular university setting. Yeah, the people we meet is across the board, and we have to be open to kind of changing our strategy as we go.
Yeah, and an inherently offensive or inherently defensive Christianity is not very compelling to people in this day and age. It has to be inherently evangelistic, which means that we have a message that we intend to give. And I mean, the scriptures, 1 Peter is about as explicit as it gets. Chapter 3, verse 15, like, we have to be ready to defend the faith. But we don't need to go in with guns a-blazing every time. In fact, rarely is that appropriate. And I think you probably got to kind of maybe in some ways learn that the hard way, or at least some people in the chaplaincy got to learn that the hard way. But over time, you come to see that people are actually very receptive to what we have to present to them. But timing is so critical. This is what I'm interested in. We really have a focus in the Institute on this problem of the unaffiliated in the culture. What was your experience with people at York University, or even Toronto in general, because it's a very secular city, when it comes to people who just, were spiritual but not religious, had no affiliation with religion?
Yeah, those are sometimes the toughest to move. And in those ways, too, I think the community would first draw them in, and they would see authentic relationships. They would see authentic friendships. And in some ways, too, they have to have a shift in their heart, like, this actually matters. Because I'm at a university, I know that school matters, but I'm not really convinced yet that faith would matter in my life. But I need to see people then that are witnessing this, that it's like, wow, they're different. And how is it that you are this way? And so this mingling with the community of faithful and then, indifferent, that's kind of the messiness of the community, where the seekers and even those that are not even sure, like, if I should be seeking, are kind of mixed in. And so it's a challenge, because I think some are like drawn into the love of the community, but then when it's like, okay, now this is discipleship, then it's like, oh gosh, that means I got to change. That means I got to give. That means, I have to be open to maybe a different way in my life. Like, my parents have this set out for me, and even I have this set out for me, but maybe the Lord has another plan. And just even having that openness, it's a scary thought to then say, come follow me. So when the invitation and even then the demands of discipleship are kind of presented, what? Some people step away. And it's interesting too, because I think our natural reaction is either, to back off and say, oh, no, it's fine then. Or to chase after them and say, no, you must stay. Yeah. But again, if you think long term, we don't know the Lord's timing, and we don't know the timing in their own life. That might happen in the second year of university. Well, there's 2 more years still. I've seen students leave for a semester, 2 semesters, 2 years, and then they come back. And that's what the time they need. They kind of need to go on a little prodigal son moment.
Yeah, sure.
And that's tough, when you see that at a university campus. It's tough when you see it in your family, as parents. Could you imagine your son, your daughter having a prodigal moment? You either maybe would water it down for them, or you kind of hold them hostage. But that's the freedom, that the Lord gives us. And so even in our ministry, it's tough. We don't back down from it. We have to present this is the discipleship road. but the timing of it as well. Like, you don't give that to someone right away, that you kind of say, these are the commandments, these are the thou shalt nots and the thou shalts. There is, a way to then in time present that. And you have to, again, be discerning about that.
Not to say, though, that there aren't certain moments where actually it is appropriate to be assertive, right? And there are those times. More often than not, that's not the case. The long game is always important, regardless of how you're kicking things off. And that's a great point that you made. But I think every individual, as we approach them with a missionary heart, every individual is going to require slightly different. Some people don't like these words, but I think they're helpful analogies to talk about tactics or strategies. There's not one silver bullet, not one tactic or strategy for all people. I mean, every single individual is going to require something a little bit different. So you're making some great points there. But let's move into the last part of our conversation here. We were having a long conversation before we came on camera about the future of the Word on Fire Institute communities, and about your vision, which obviously is derivative of the greater vision that Bishop Barron has had for these communities from the beginning. Talk a little bit about some of what we were discussing before. There were 3 key words that you outlined for us that kind of, in a way, sum up where we're headed with the Word on Fire Institute communities. The 3 words were spirituality, community, and mission. Just talk about those words and what they mean for the future of the Word on Fire Institute communities.
Totally, yeah. So we want to continue to propel this movement, into the future, but even into our culture, And so we want to make sure that the spirituality is in our hearts. It's really something that it's not on the exterior, but it's something that goes interior into our own hearts. Because the spirituality is the foundation and the formation to which our mission flows from. And so if it's not the Word on Fire spirituality, it's some other spirituality, and that's going to have a different outcome as well. So we want to bring the spirituality deep down in our hearts, that we're inhaling the spirituality and exhaling mission, and that becomes the rhythm and the cycle for all of our members. And then we want to gather the members and connect them even more deeply and intimately. So right now we have a digital platform where they're connected, but we want to even go further on the digital platform, to have ways that, they're connected as businessmen and women, or state of life, different ways that they can find support, but also formation for their unique way that they're going to then do mission. And the third thing is mission. We want to, the movement exists to evangelize the culture. If we're not going out, if we're just like a group that perpetually is formed, it is not true to the spirituality, but it's also going to turn in on itself. It's going to get sick, it's going to rot, and it's going to die. So we have to constantly then be looking about, okay, now let's go out. Let's do something uncomfortable, and that, I think, once the communities too are more connected, people have the support that they can discern in our local area. How can maybe we do a local event, but also who are the people in our area that let's pull them in for a Bible study. Let's just host a meal, and let's start making communities where we are, So this threefold kind of approach, like, again, bringing the spirituality in the heart, connecting our members digitally, but also in person, and then moving out. Let's get out of here, and then continuing the cycle. Be fed by the spirituality, be fed by the community, go out, and the cycle continues.
Yeah, and a lot of things we've been kind of planning on launching a lot of this stuff, and of course we're still in the midst of COVID, right? And so there's a little bit of a limitation in regard to getting people under our name meeting together in person, because in some states right now it's literally illegal to ask people to do that. So we had to kind of go back to the drawing board a little bit on how to do that. And so we're going to be doing some things in the digital platform. And I'm really excited about, we can't give the particulars right now just because we have yet to launch it. But there's some great stuff happening that's coming very soon to really kick off this whole kind of threefold reality. And to me, I think to Bishop Barron as well, this is the next major stage in the movement itself. because every successful movement starts with formation. That's how it has to work. You have to be formed in the ethos of the mission and the ethos of your founder. You have to understand our perspective and the way in which we express the faith, and then we can send you out, right? But the next step is, okay, let's get people together. Let's get kind of a shared spirituality, a shared community, a shared mission in their local areas and nationally, internationally, and then send them out. So I just, to all of our members watching, just be excited because there's some great stuff coming.
And be excited because Joe Zambon is now a fellow of the Word on Fire Institute, and we're happy to have you. And you've just got so much to offer this entire mission, the future movement, and we're blessed to have you on the team. So. Any last words?
No, it's a pleasure, and I really look forward to meeting a lot of the community members as we actually start meeting each other. You know, we start sharing conversations, we start sharing strategies, we start sharing victories, we start sharing losses that we're going to journey together. So I'm excited I'm glad to have met the team here, but the team is much bigger than that, and the family is much bigger than that. So I'm looking forward to what's coming up too.
Awesome.
All right, Jared and Joe, thanks for taking the time to do this interview and have this conversation. And you've given us so much to be hopeful for, and it's a pleasure to be working with both of you as we move onward and upward with the mission of the Word on Fire Institute. And to all of you watching right now, thanks for spending this time with us. If you're a member of the Word on Fire Institute, that's great. Starting tonight, you'll be able to get back in there, continue taking your courses, to interact with the community members in the forums. For those of you that are not members, wordonfire.institute is the place to go. Now, for today only, until 5 p.m. Central, Central time. I wanted to make sure I had that time zone right. You're not going to be able to get into the Institute website because we're doing a major overhaul on the software of the website. But starting tonight, 5 p.m. Central, you'll be able to get back in there. If you're not a member, wordonfire.institute, that's the time when you'll be able to sign up and join us. Join tens of thousands in the Institute. Be formed, be ready to evangelize the culture, and grow together as this amazing community. So join us at wordonfire.institute, and God bless all of you.